Welcome to today's tutorial. We're going to be painting a boat using oil paint. You can use acrylic, poster paint or gouache if you wish. The colours that I'll be using include titanium white, which is this one. Then we have lemon yellow, which is this one. Yellow ochre on the top right. Cadmium red, second row on the left. Crimson alizarin. Violet grey. Permanent mauve. Sap green. Coeruleum blue, a light blue. Primary cyan, a darker blue. I'm using liquid to quicken the drying time. You won't need to use this if you're using other types of paint, such as acrylic, gouache or poster paint. The liquid also offers a bit of fluidity to the oil paint, otherwise I might need to add some walnut oil or linseed oil. Normally I'd start with the main subject, which is the boat. I've done a faint outline in charcoal. There are trees on the left, a bank on the far right. Most of the space to the right and below the boat represents the lake. But because this is a demonstration, and I don't want you to get covered in paint like I normally do, I'm going to start with the top right hand side, which is the background. There'll be a bit of sky, some bushes, the bank, and then we'll move down this way. So I'm going to mix my colours. Using the tip of my palette knife, I'm going to mix some white and a tiny bit of lemon yellow. And an even smaller touch of yellow ochre. A tiny bit on the end of the palette knife. A bit more lemon yellow. A bit more white. And I'm going to put a bit of this mix over here so that I can add some blue and green to it. So that I don't waste any paint, I used this special tool. It's a silicone tool to scrape the paint off my palette knife. You can see the size of the palette knife against my hand. Now if I hold the ruler in my left hand, you can see the size of the palette knife again. I'm going to use this for mixing. Some people use it instead of a paintbrush. Holding the ruler, you can see the size of the canvas. It's approximately 30 centimetres deep by 42 centimetres across. One of the brushes that I'll be using is a filbert brush, number 6, Daleroni. Nearly all of the brushes that I use are synthetic. And the other brush that I'm going to be using is this flat brush, a number 8 flat shader. Another is this graduate brush, an angle shader. A smaller chisel silicone tool number 2. 2 old round brushes, probably a size 1, and a smaller filbert brush. I've also got an old round bristle brush. I'm going to mix together a tiny bit of cyan blue and some white, and you can see how far that blue goes. Now I'll add a lot more white. Using the chisel tool, I'm painting some of the sky, taking into account where some of the bushes are going to be. Taking some of the yellow mix, I'll add the sunlight. Obviously, if you mix blue and yellow, you'll get green. So we don't want to do that at this time. I'm adding some white in on the left and I'll spread it across. I don't mind if it turns a bit green along the edge, because that is where the bushes will be. I'm going to dab up here using the flat number 8 brush. Now I'm going to mix a touch of light blue with the other mix, so that's both blues and white. And I'm taking some of the yellow and mixing it all together. A tiny bit, and see what colour we get. I'm going to add a bit more cyan and a chunk of lemon yellow. Using the small chisel tool again, I'm going to scoop up some of this and put it down here. It's almost like a triangle. I wasn't aiming for a triangle there. Some of the colour here, this is like the sunlight has caught the bank. I'm taking a bit of white and adding it here and putting it along the top edge. A little bit of the blue mix here down at the bottom. Again, using the flat brush, a number 8, I'm going to stroke the paint here. I don't want the blue to go all the way along. I'm hoping that the colours will blend in slightly. It's going to get darker down at the bottom. And I've taken some of this yellow and a bit of green, and I'll blend it with this edge, where the dark blue is. A bit more of the lighter colour on the left, representing sunlight on the top of the bank. I don't want too many harsh edges, but I don't want to blend it in completely. Behind here I want some shadow. First I'm going to make this bank a bit bigger, so I'll get some white and I'll add a bit of this yellow. I want a bit of dark here, so I'm going to use my silicone tool and I'm going to mix some primary cyan with the blue mix, and this will be the shadow. Some of the leaves will have sunlight on them. Using the flat brush, which still has a bit of yellow, I'm adding some leaves around the shaded area. A bit more of the blues, the first mix, and extra cyan. To make some of the foliage, I'm using a little green mix and a touch of the blue mix to create a green halo effect around the current shading. Dabbing creates different tonal strengths and patterns. Some are light and some are dark. Where it overlaps the yellowy green, it picks up some of that colour too, and this makes those areas lighter. I've picked up some of the yellow, and this will be used to create leaves that are touched by the sunlight on the left-hand side of the trees and bushes. A bit of Coeruleum Blue, followed by green and white. This has added more to the shady side on the right. Using the flat brush, I can dab a few darker leaves amongst the sunlit ones on the other side. Some yellow for highlights again. Because the paint hasn't dried yet, it will blend where I apply new paint over old. I'm patting the white over the trees to make different impressions. A bit more at the top and the left edge. I've picked up some of the blue mix and I'm going to form a bush on the left of the bank. The colour is stronger to indicate that it is closer to the viewer. The faded colours on the first trees indicate that they are in the distance. Using white, I can create more highlights to show that the bank is in the sunshine. Yellow and white for the leaves on this bush. I'm creating a little shadow under the branches of the tree on the far side. Using a bit of green, I'm making some branches in the sunlight. The green is blending with the yellow below. This is softening the tree line above the grass. Permanent mauve, the slightest touch of green, a bit of white, a tiny bit of crimson. This is creating a different colour foliage for a tree. It could be an acer or a plum tree. The crimson and white are added for the lighter coloured leaves near the top of the tree. More of the crimson, mauve and white. For the shadow below, a bit of mauve and cyan. The grass below will be darker, so added to this mix is some more of the green. This can then be applied under the tree. Some crimson on top to indicate fallen leaves. A bit more mauve and a touch of violet grey, and some cyan for the shadow. A bit of sap green mixed with the yellow for the trees to the right. I'm going to mix up a bit of orange using lemon yellow and a tiny amount of cadmium red. That's a bit too dark. A little red goes a long way. So I'll add some more yellow to get the right shade. So with this dark orange, I can add yellow to the edge and mix gradually to create a lighter and a darker shade. Using this larger silicone tool, I'm going to pick up some of the orange and some of the green and start filling in the trees over on the right. A bit more sap green, about the size of a small pea, and a little yellow mix. I've scooped up some of the orange and I'm applying it randomly to the green trees. Some yellow is added to the left for the sunlit leaves. Some green and blue for the darker side on the right, farthest from the sun. I am going to scoop up some of this orange. Now, mixing and adding more green to cover the white and make it darker just here. I'll keep going like this. Adding a bit of yellow ochre amongst the green. Now using the flat brush again, I'm dabbing to smooth some of the colour and for a better coverage of the paint on the canvas. I've made a browny orange by mixing the green on the brush, a touch of cadmium red, not too much, and the yellow mix. Using the red and yellow alone would create orange. The addition of green hints at a brown colour. A few more yellow leaf clusters. Because of the direction of the sunlight coming from left to right, I'm making a light pink for the highlights on this tree. Mixing a bit of white with crimson, a hint of violet grey, and I'm dabbing the edges of the branches, adding more white when needed. Taking some of the yellow, I can add highlights to the branches of the green tree. I'm going to make a brown to form the tree trunks for the trees. A simple brown is made from red, blue and yellow. Using green, I can add red because the green is made up of blue and yellow. Be bold when making the tree trunks. You can add a bit of white as a highlight on the tree trunk and then blend it in. I need to darken the tree trunks, so the darker shades are blue, mauve and green. I'm using the small filbert brush for more shadow. Firstly, with the palette knife, I'm mixing some cyan, mauve and a touch of sap green. I'm using liquid to help my paint spread easily, but you might use a thinner or linseed oil or similar. This dark mixture is used for the shadow under some flowers on the far side. I'm also defining the water's edge. Mixing in some sap green, I'm taking the mix to the left and I'm stroking along the edge of the water again. Some more blue. This is the reflection in the water. Using a small round brush to colour the flowers on this plant, I'm using a mix of violet grey, permanent mauve and a bit of white. Because the colours are not thoroughly mixed, this helps to give a slight variation in tone and colour when applying the paint, thus making it appear more natural. Some more mauve near the base. The darker tones are the flowers in the shadow. White is used closer to the top, and a touch of white and crimson to add some variation. Switching back to the small filbert brush, a mix of sap green and yellow to add some greenery. A bit of colour blending along the bank above the water. White is added to the yellow-green mix and then dabbed along the bank. I'm using the flat brush to blend the paint. Firstly, I'm wiping off excess green on the palette and I'm picking up a tiny amount of lemon yellow. For the water, I've taken some light blue, some lemon yellow, and the mix on the left, and I'm using this. A bit more of the lemon yellow and a bit more white added too. Mixing a bit of white, some more blue, some more blending of the waves. There aren't too many waves because this is a small lake, so a few ripples only. I'll blend the brush strokes at the top with a few gentle sideways strokes. Now that the paint has spread a little, you can see the colour of the blue. Some lemon yellow and white, then some more yellow. Now some white mixed with yellow. This has also picked up some of the blue-green mix, and so it appears to have a pale green tint. I want a little bit of the light blue, and I'm going to mix it with some white and add it in strokes as I did before with the other colours. I want a little bit here and there to give a variation in colour and tone. I'm using some of the paint to fill in the white areas, and some will be painted over existing colour to blend in. Using the angle brush, I'm going to dip it in the primary cyan and then in a green mix. And now a little bit of the violet and mauve. This is going along the water's edge to define the shape of the lake and the bank. It's showing some of the shadow cast by the trees. A few strokes under the bush on the left. Now I'm mixing a bit of sap green with light blue and a small amount of white and lemon yellow. On the left, I'm mixing a little cyan, some lemon yellow, a tiny amount of white. Adding some more yellow creates this green. Separately, I'm taking a tiny amount of yellow ochre mixed with a similar amount of white. Using the flat brush, I'm dipping it in the cyan mix and I'm making some dark strokes to the right of the boat. It's a bit dark, so I'm going to add some more lemon yellow and white. Some white mixed with lemon yellow. I've picked up some of the bluey green colour that was already painted and I'm applying it as I cover new areas. The white and yellow mix is also helping to lighten the dark tonal area. Now we're adding some white where the sunlight reaches the water between the trees on the far side. The white area of the canvas has now been filled in with a white-yellow mix. Now we're adding some cerulean blue and a bit of white, using small strokes to represent the different reflections of light on the water. White and lemon yellow are used to create an effect of dappled sunlight. I'm marking the edge of the boat so that it's better defined as I paint the water that surrounds it. Now adding some white and lemon yellow to break up the dark area. Adding some lemon yellow next to the edge of the boat. Now more of the cyan and sap green. I want to use some of this pink here and put it in little blobs here and there, blending as I go. Using the mauve, white and violet grey, I'm adding a few strokes into the mix over here. A little white here and some blue. This is the light reappearing below the shaded area. Using the angle shader brush, I'm going to take a little bit of this blue and I'm making some small ripples on the water to give it movement. I'm using the edge of the brush, sideways on, to create thin, slightly wavy lines and little dashes. Nothing too harsh. A bit more white. I'm making some more orange using lemon yellow, a small amount of cadmium red, and leaving the larger part of the red to one side, I'm slowly mixing the remainder with the yellow. You can see that a nice bright orange is forming. I'm using some of this new colour and adding it in random small strokes. A little bit more lemon yellow is added. This is going to be below the shadow in the top left. Now we're using Coeruleum Blue, a bit of lemon yellow and white. This is still mixing with the orange that I have on my brush. Now a bit more white. I'm painting around the reflection of the boat in the water, as I want to leave this area blank for now, and a little more blue mix on the right of the boat. I'm just blending a little to hide some of the more obvious strokes. A few darker strokes here and there. Now I'm adding a lighter tone to even it out. A little bit of paint goes a long way. Now we're adding some green to the bottom right, and it's spread out amongst the yellow area. A bit of green at the bottom, some more white, and now a bit of yellow. I'm blending as I go, trying to cover up bits of canvas. I've got some Coeruleum Blue, the light blue, in the bottom left-hand corner. It's mixed with primary cyan and a bit of white. A bit of yellow. It has a greenish tint because of picking up some of the blues and greens earlier. Now more lemon yellow. I'm adding a bit of white to make it a paler shade. Now a bit of both blues are being mixed and added. And I'm doing a quick rough sketch for the shadow of the tree. Both blues and a touch of green mixed in. This dark area will be the edge of the bank here. A bit of yellow, creating a vivid green, not too dissimilar to Viridian. Some of the green mix to fill in the space on the left. It also illustrates the colour provided by the reflection of so much greenery in the water, and it makes a nice background colour. Greeny white, followed by a lemon yellow, and adding some pale blue to create a greener shade. I'm going to introduce a bit of this, which is a blue called French Ultramarine. I've squeezed a small amount. It's one of those colours that goes a long way, like the red and the darker blues. Using the palette knife, I want to show the space remaining that we're going to fill in. Then we'll do the boat. I'm mixing a bit of French Ultramarine, primary cyan, and a tiny amount of yellow ochre. A nice dark green. Using the large chisel tool, the silicone tool, I'm picking up some colour and starting on the background greenery amongst the trees. Adding some lemon yellow, and now I'm adding some sap green. Some sap green between the trees. a bit of French ultramarine near the base of the trees where it's darker. I'm painting around the tree trunks and leaving these areas white for now. A bit of the blue mix in the middle. I've continued to add some green, yellow and blues in between the trees to create foliage, the bushes and the plants. Some patches of white and lemon yellow, creating variation and light between the trees. A few dabs of yellow ochre using the flat brush. A few dabs of white in the same area. I've added some dabs of yellow and white between the trees, and I'm now softening the strokes using the flat brush. I need a darker colour in between, so I'm using some blue and some yellow ochre. Some white, yellow ochre and a touch of orange. Adding just white to the branches gives a faded appearance, as though the branches and the leaves are disappearing into the sunlight. Brown is a mix of red, yellow and blue. For the trees, I'm actually going to use some of this green over here, which is blue and yellow, and add it to the orange. I want to make the trunk a bit green, so I'm going to use some yellow ochre. I'm going to keep adding light and dark shading to the trees until I'm happy that the trunks look more natural and have captured the light and shadow created by their situation. Using permanent mauve, white and violet grey, I'm creating some colourful flowers at the base of this tree. Some French ultramarine to create a bush and leaves to the left of and beneath the flowers. I need to take some of this crimson and I'm going to paint at the bottom of the tree. This is the colour of the earth. yellow ochre, cadmium red and white. And adding this mix separately to the green. A bit more yellow ochre, and I'm making a third colour by mixing in some red. Now adding lemon yellow to the red mix. Using the silicone tool, I'm taking some of the mix on the right, the yellow ochre, red and white, and I'm going to apply this to the bank as the earth colour. Now adding some French ultramarine, a bit of mauve to create shadow beneath the tree. Using the mix on the right and left together, I'm adding more background colour to the bank. It's like a dark sandy colour or a pale earth tone. I'm using the three mixed colours for the bank, and I'm going to put in some of the green mix along the length of the tree trunk. I'm scooping up some of the greens and browns to fill in the blank canvas of the island. I've left some blank space next to the water for a few rocks. I'm adding some crimson to the earth colour behind the boat. I'm creating some shadow next to the tree using crimson. The white highlights represent the sunlit areas. By dabbing gently, the flat brush can be used to blend the colours. A little mauve behind the boat for the shadow. A bit of yellow ochre directly onto the earth tones. The top edge of the bank catches the sun. This edge will have lighter tones on it, including white and lemon yellow. The land immediately behind the boat will be in the shade, and I'm using some more mauve and ultramarine to create this effect. Painting the rocks using the light warm tones. Violet, grey and crimson can be mixed together next to the tree. Some blue shadow under the flowering bush. Yellow ochre, cadmium red and a bit of green to make an earth colour above the boat. Then we can add some light blue. For the rocks, I'm starting with a mix of ultramarine, cyan, sap green and crimson. This will be used for the dark shadow. Next, white and violet grey. White and yellow ochre. A bit of violet grey to add shadow to the rocks, to give them a 3D, uneven surface, a more natural look. A bit more blue to the dark shadows. 2 blues and green mixed together. A bit of white and yellow ochre for the top of the rocks, the part that is getting the most light. Some more violet grey shadow. Some white for the light areas. I'm adding some shadow between the rocks at the base of the land where it meets the water. Violet grey and mauve to create the reflection in the water. Also, ultramarine and white. Mixing the purples with white and making some random marks. The earth mixed colour with white and extra lemon yellow. Some cadmium red mixed with yellow ochre. A bit of sap green coming down the bank. This is in the shadow. The creamy yellow highlights are on the top edge of the bank, and I'm just working my way along. A bit of crimson for the shadow area and some mauve. The silicone tool can be used for blending and adding paint. I'm putting some ultramarine down here to darken this area away from direct sunlight. I'm going to take some of this orange colour and use it on the tree trunk for the bark. Now, some ready orange. Some white yellow highlights along the edge of the tree, smoothing out using the chisel tool. Some bits of white on the tree trunk. Coeruleum blue, yellow and white. I'm making some strokes on this yellow area to make it less flat. Adding a few touches of yellow using the silicone tool. A bit of white on the water to create movement. I'm starting the boat, the main subject, using lemon yellow. I'm applying it using the larger chisel tool. Adding a little white for the highlights. I'm trying to follow the curved lines of the panels that make up the side of the boat. Some yellow ochre mixed in for a darker yellow representing the reflection of the boat in the water. A bit of white too. This will help to give fluidity to the colour. A few touches of blue, green and white to the water. I'm defining the edge of the boat's reflection in the water by adding some shadow. There are some breaks along the edge of the reflection where there is movement in the water. I'm adding horizontal strokes of blue, green and white to make the image seem more natural. To create a dark edge where the boat meets the water, I'm using a mix of the light blue, the primary cyan and yellow ochre. The end of the boat is partly shaded, so I'm using the green mix with lemon yellow. White and blue near the bottom, and I'm brushing the colour lightly. This is repeated in a reflection in the water. Also, a bit of French ultramarine at the base. A touch of white to soften the edge. Using the flat brush sideways on, I can add detail to the side of the boat using a green mix. The lines of the boat are curved, a bit like a banana shape or a big smile, slightly higher on the left. Some white on the end of the boat because it's not a uniform colour. I'm adding some lemon yellow and some yellow ochre on the left of the end of the boat as part of the reflection. I'm mixing some white with orange and a dab of green. This will make a browny colour for the wooden panel at the end of the boat. A little white in the mix too. A bit of mauve mixed with orange. Some more of the cadmium red mixed with orange, yellow ochre and mauve. A bit of violet grey painted in. I'm marking out the bench seats inside the boat. Using a flat brush, I'm going to cover the water without any paint. This will smooth out a few of the ripples on the water. Dabbing some crimson using the round bristle brush. Defining some of the edges using cyan mixed with brown. Using the small silicone tool, I'm drawing a wooden bar that runs the length of the boat. This will help to define the shape of the boat. Some ultramarine and green to create shadow at the bottom of the boat and create more of a 3D shape. Whoa! The flat brush brings out the colour when the paint spreads. It was more than I was expecting. Adding a bit of lemon yellow lightens this colour. I'm working along the boat using a brown colour to create the wooden edge. Some wavy lines in the water using blue and green. Some highlights along the top edge of the boat. A mix of yellow, orange and brown to create the seats within the boat. For the interior colour, I'm using Coeruleum Blue and green and a bit of white. A bit of mauve in the corner where it's darker and along the inside edge at the top. Using the small round brush, I'm filling in some of the hard to reach gaps, such as under the first seat. I'm also smoothing out some of the strokes inside the boat. I'm going around the edge of the seating area. Some additional shadow under the top edge of the boat. A mix of yellow ochre, a bit of green, a bit of crimson, a bit of lemon yellow. Using a small brush, I'm going to add some depth to the boat reflection in the water. A bit of sap green with yellow ochre and cerulean blue. A touch of white and lemon yellow. This is to define the lines on the boat and to make it more solid. Some white highlights. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe if you haven't already, so that you don't miss the next one. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial, and well done if you've finished your painting.